Hi, Melissa McDonald here from Pottsville and Cabarita Physiotherapy, and today I've got a webinar for you on breathing retraining. So right now, before we begin, I want you to think about how you're breathing right now. I want you to actually pause this video and test how many breaths you take in 1 minute. And then if you can also take your heart rate over 1 minute. So when we assess your pattern of breathing, these are the things that we're looking for. So we're not just looking for respiratory rate, but we're looking, can we hear you breathing? Where is the breath coming from? Are you breathing through your nose? Are you breathing through your mouth? What does your body look like when you're breathing? So there's a lot that we look up when we assess your breathing. Correct breathing should be rhythmic, so it should be going in and out in a beautiful rhythmic pattern. It should be silent. We shouldn't be able to hear the person next to us breathing. We should be able to breathe in and out through our nose, unless of course there's a structural reason why we can't. Breathing should be diaphragmatic, which means we're breathing right down into the base of our lungs, not breathing with our shoulders going up and down. Now, the correct rate of breath is 8 to 12 breaths per minute. So if you can go back to your little test that you did on yourself a couple of minutes ago and compare your breathing rate to the ideal breathing rate. So here's just a lovely little diagram of how we want this rhythmic breathing to look like. Whether we're awake, up and about, or asleep, we still want to be breathing like this. Then down here we've got a faulty breathing pattern. So lots of sighing and yawning, and you can see the breath here is all over the place. And this is a faulty breathing pattern. What happens when we don't breathe properly? What happens to our body? These are some of the symptoms that you might experience. You might feel faint, you might feel dizzy, lightheaded, you might have poor memory, you might get tingling and cold in your fingers and toes, muscle spasm or just general spasm, tightness in the body, shortness of breath. If you're asthmatic, it could bring on an asthma attack, heart palpitations, atypical pains in the chest, rapid heart rate. You might have a dry mouth. You might get anxiety. You might feel tense, and you might just feel tired, exhausted all of the time. So of course there are other reasons for these symptoms as well, but certainly if you have a poor breathing pattern, these are some of the symptoms that you will experience. If you're a mouth breather, so you're tending to breathe with your mouth open instead of breathing through your nose, taking your breath in and out through your mouth, these are some of the other symptoms that you may find as well. So bad breath, dental decay, gum disease, dysfunction of the jaw joint, problem with your teeth, problem when you're eating. People might say, you're such a noisy eater. And also enlarged tonsils and adenoids, which can be interesting in children. Often we see this. So here's a few little things of what faulty breathing looks like. And we've already touched on these sighing and yawning, the noisy breathing, the snorer at night, the person that's breathing with their mouth open, the person that's breathing up with their chest and with a high respiratory rate. So above 14, 8 to 12, remember, is ideal. Above 14, we really consider it's a faulty breathing pattern. So here we've got some people who can breathe incorrectly due to diseases that they may have. So people with asthma, people with nasal problems, sinus infection, allergies, people that are snoring. So that's like a chicken and the egg, which one comes first? Same with sleep apnea. People that have got fatigue, people that have a poor capability of exercising, people that suffer from anxiety, and people that have chronic pain. So as physiotherapists, this is where we're really interested. Our people that have got this chronic stress, chronic pain, possibly poor exercise capacity as well. So we really want to help you get a correct breathing pattern so we can help these things as well. Stress is the big one. So stress will definitely induce a poor breathing pattern. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So other things that can disturb your breathing, we mentioned stress already, illness, infection, environmental factors. So if you're just rushing all the time, everything's happening, you'll tend to breathe faster. Lack of exercise or too much exercise with a poor breathing pattern. Getting too hot. Poor diet, and again we'll talk about this later. Poor posture, some of the medications you might be taking, and doing too much deep breathing. And that's something that we often do because we think it's really good for us, but certainly there is too much of a good thing, and we'll find out why in a moment. So what actually happens when you overbreathe? So we're taking in more oxygen, so that sounds like it's ideal. But our carbon dioxide levels drop. And everyone thinks of oxygen as the good gas, carbon dioxide as the bad gas. So you're thinking, well, what's the problem with that? And we'll talk a little bit about the biochemistry behind that in a minute. When you overbreathe, especially if you're mouth breathing, you get your dehydrate your airways, so you get that very dry mouth feeling. Now back to what happens when the carbon dioxide drops. So carbon dioxide is actually really important. We do need a certain amount of carbon dioxide in our blood. So when we're over breathing, we have increased oxygen in the blood, but that oxygen actually doesn't go into the cells because oxygen needs a certain level of carbon dioxide to be released into the cells. Sorry, that should say cells. And so we can have more oxygen flowing around through our blood, oxygen that's available for us, but without that carbon dioxide to release the bonds in the hemoglobin, it's of no use to us. We can't get it into our cells where we need it. Other things that carbon dioxide is responsible for, when it drops, our blood vessels narrow, our bronchial tubes narrow, which is why it can induce an asthma attack. Our gut wall spasms, so you might get stomach pains. Our bladder wall tightens, so there might be problems with incontinence or in children bedwetting at night. Carbon dioxide is like our natural bronchodilator, antihistamine and muscle relaxant all in one. So you can see here we certainly need some carbon dioxide in our system. When the carbon dioxide drops, it actually changes the pH level of the blood. So as I mentioned before, the cells do not release their oxygen because the bond between the oxygen and the red blood cells is really tight. It even gets tighter. It needs that carbon dioxide, the presence of carbon dioxide, to release that bond, to release the oxygen out of the blood cells and into the tissues. So a good example that we'll all know is when you're blowing up a balloon. If you're blowing up a load of balloons, you actually get really dizzy really quickly. And that's an example of blowing off too much carbon dioxide. Here's a nice little image of an MRI of someone's brain. So this is after 1 minute, just 1 minute of breathing, hyperventilation, over breathing. So this is the oxygenation in a normal brain, and then you can see here there's actually 40% less oxygen in the brain after 1 minute. And so that person will be feeling very dizzy. So that would be your blowing up the balloon example, or your panic attack, stress, anxiety example. So what's the bottom line? Depending on your results from the test you did at the very beginning, maybe you've been over breathing. Maybe this has led to some of the symptoms that we've mentioned. You certainly probably don't have all of them, but you might have had some of them. And what that means, what that means is that the brain's breathing set point has changed. So obviously breathing is an automatic thing. We don't have to think about it. But over time and for whatever reason, your set point has changed and increased your baseline breathing rate. So now you're just breathing too much all day and all night. So we need to fix that. we can change the way we breathe, and we can change the brain set point over time. So with our breath retraining that we're going to be looking at today, we're aiming to restore normal physiological breathing. So just a reminder of what good breathing is. It's rhythmic. It's in and out with that nice gentle rhythm. It's silent. It's through the nose. It's going down into the base of the lungs, not up here. It's 8 to 12 breaths per minute. So today I'm going to go over with you the 9 healthy habits of breathing, and we'll talk about each one of these in turn. Healthy habit number 1 is awareness. So what this means is just on yourself doing a spot check regularly throughout the day. So I recommend every hour. You might want to set an alarm on your phone to start off with, and just have a think about, where are you breathing? Are you breathing through your mouth? Is your mouth falling open all the time? You might not even have been aware that you were doing it. So just starting with those spot checks and just working out, where is your breathing happening? Can you hear your breathing? Is it forced breath? So you might be breathing through your nose, but you might be able to really hear that breath, or it might be up here with your shoulders moving up and down. So just becoming aware, and it doesn't hurt to do this in front of the mirror as well. Just, where are you breathing? How are you breathing? We use an exercise called Shrink the Cloud. So imagine this is your cloud of breath that you're breathing in and out. So to start with, your cloud might be this big, and each day we want to start to try to make that cloud of breath just a tiny bit smaller. So we don't want to go extreme, because we are changing our brain set point. This will need to happen slowly. But if each day you just think about taking gradually smaller breaths and more relaxed breaths and slower breaths, so that you're not gasping your air and taking those huge big breaths that we don't need. Certainly a little bit of deep breathing is okay for, 3 deep breaths for relaxation, but you don't want to be doing it for a minute or 2 minutes, or certainly during a whole exercise class, for example. Healthy habit number 2 is nose breathing. So this goes hand in hand with awareness. And what we need to do is just, whenever we become aware that we're breathing through our mouth, closing our mouth and trying to breathe through our nose. Now, if you've got any sinus or any occlusion, any problems with your nose, you might find this really difficult. Still try to do it. And even if you can only breathe through your nose for 20 seconds or 30 seconds, it's a start. So just don't give up. Don't say, oh no, I can't do it. Even if it's only 5 seconds, just starting to get your body used to breathing through the nose again. And over time, it should get easier and easier until you're a 100% nose breather. This is a lovely one. If you are a snorer, staying off your back will certainly help, because you can see, as in the picture here, that jaw drops down and becomes a really wide open mouth breather. It's a terrible breathing pattern. You'll get all those physiological symptoms we mentioned before, but also unhappy wife over here. So lying on your side and even elevating the head of your bed slightly will help. So we don't recommend 2 pillows, because that's going to be bad for your neck, but you might want to put a little 5-centimeter block of wood under the head end of your bed, so your bed's on a slight angle rather than flat. That might help as well. It is important to nose breathe during physical activity. So a lot of people find that they're really good with nose breathing when they're just, going through their standard day-to-day activities, but when it comes to pushing their bodies a little harder, straight away they go to mouth breathing. So we're going to try to fight this, and that might mean that you need to go a little bit slower. You might not be winning your race straight off when you change over to nose breathing, but eventually you'll find that your performance actually improves when you can do your physical activity with nose breathing, because your blood gases are better, and we'll talk about this again a little bit more later. Oh, so the little hare and the tortoise. So this is just to remind us, sometimes you have to go slow to start with. So with your physical exertion, it might be worth, instead of going for a sprint while you're training your breath, you might just go for a jog or even a fast walk. And then once you build up your tolerance to nose breathing with exercise, then you can go back to your faster speeds. Healthy habit number 3, and this is one that us physios obviously love, is upright posture. So it's impossible to diaphragmatically breathe if you're slouched over. So we call it the coat hanger posture or the hot air balloon posture. So imagine, like in that picture, you've got the coat hanger and it's holding you up in the cupboard. You're getting pulled up, or the hot air balloon's pulling you up. So you're really elongating through your body, lifting your chest, drawing your shoulder blades down and back, opening the chest at the front so that your breathing muscles can work effectively and you can get a good breath. And we can certainly help you with this. We can do video analysis of your posture and help you with your breathing and correct posture. This is pretty much what everyone looks like. I always laugh when I drive to work in the morning, going past all the kids at the bus stop with their mobile phones or their devices, and I wonder how we're going to end up, because this is a pretty standard posture. We're hunched over and staring at our device. So, certainly if you've got people yourself or people in your family that you can encourage out of this posture, not only is it going to help their breathing, but certainly their neck, their spine, everything's going to benefit from improving that posture. Healthy habit number 4, regular breathing. So what a lot of people do is breathe quite normally, but then take a sigh really quite often throughout the day. So it's not just a yawn when you're tired, it's like you're kind of gasping for a little bit more air. And so what we advise, if you do this, is to do a short breath hold exercise. So if you feel that you're about to sigh or yawn, try to catch it and don't do it, and do this little 3-second hold. Or if you do sigh or yawn, you definitely want to do this 3-second hold after. And what that does is it just builds that carbon dioxide level back up again. So it is literally, you hold your breath for a count of 3 and then you resume normal breathing. So you don't want to hold your breath and then gasp a big breath of air in. So you just want to hold your breath 1, 2, 3 and then return to normal breathing. You'll find if you do this consistently over about a week, you should find that regular sighing and regular yawning does disappear quite quickly. We've talked about relaxed diaphragmatic breathing. So here's a little image of the diaphragm. So it sits right in there underneath the ribs. And this is the main muscle that we should be using for breathing. So when we breathe in, the diaphragm just flattens down a little bit to make room for the air in the lungs. Breathe out and it goes up a little. So this is where we're wanting to feel the breath. So imagine putting your hands around the base of your lower ribs there. And when you take a breath in, you want those hands to be going out like we call it a bibasal lateral expansion. So we want those lower ribs kind of flaring in and out, maybe a little bit of movement of the stomach, not forced up and down, but we certainly don't want to see this sort of breathing where we're really seeing these neck muscles turning on and the shoulders lifting up and down, that forced breath. Often we use the term breathing into your back, so we want you to visualize the breath coming all the way down to the base, the very back of the lungs, rather than coming forward. A lot of people are kind of sending their breath more to their chest bone. So thinking of that term, breathing into your back, when you're trying to learn this new breathing pattern. Healthy habit number 6 is how many breaths we're doing. So we've already talked about that. We're aiming for 8 to 12 breaths. Healthy habit number 7, silent, invisible breathing. So when someone's looking at you, you should not be able to see them breathing. So it just should be so subtle and so quiet that you look like a hibernating bear. Or maybe you look like one of these statues. You don't even know if they're real or not. So often when we're retraining children, we play this statue game where they're trying to breathe. They're still breathing, they're not holding their breath, but so silently and invisible that we can't even tell if they're breathing. In a healthy breather, we do have a natural pause between breathing out and breathing in. So normally that's about 3 to 4 seconds. When we assess your breathing, we look at something called the comfort pause. So what this is, it's the time in seconds that you can hold your breath after you've breathed out. So really important that it's after an expiration, not an inspiration, and then resume breathing with a normal breath pattern. So for example, you breathe out, your breath's all the way out, you hold your breath, hold your breath, hold your breath. If you have to when you come back to breathing, then you've held your breath for too long. So we want you to be able to breathe out, hold your breath, and then breathe in with that silent, invisible breathing. And this comfort pause gives us a little bit of an indication of your tolerance to carbon dioxide. So if you can do that now, just pause and maybe get a stopwatch or your phone and have a little go of assessing what your comfort pause is. And like I say, if you go too far and you need to take that big breath in, just have about a minute's rest and try again. And so you're going to get that time where you can resume your normal, silent, invisible breathing. It's really important for us to understand that it is our carbon dioxide levels that regulate our breathing pattern. So that set point in the brain, that is set by our carbon dioxide levels. It's not set by, oh, we need some more oxygen. So I think, we all focus too much on the oxygen. Certainly we need the oxygen, but to get the oxygen, we've got to have the carbon dioxide levels right. So coming back to your comfort pause now, this is what's considered normal. So 40 is a normal comfort pause. 20 to 40, mild breathing dysfunction, we're not too concerned. But if you're under 20, we definitely need to start on this breath retraining. So putting into practice all the steps that I'm going over with you now. Healthy habit number 8 is breath control when talking. So what we don't want to see when we're talking is that you're having to gasp air between breaths like this. So if you're a poor breather, particularly if you're a mouth breather, you might find it hard to actually speak for long periods of time. So we need breath control when talking. Here's a little exercise we can do. So a normal silent breath in, and then A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Another breath in. H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Another breath in. Of course, these breaths are through the nose, etc., all the way to the end. So you can practice just breaking up your speech with those silent, invisible breaths often enough. So we don't want to be talking, holding our breath until we need to take a gasp of air. So we want to be getting just those little rhythmical breaths in amongst our speech. So the alphabet exercise is a really good one. It doesn't have to be the alphabet. You can do it with anything, but we should be seeing gentle nose breaths in amongst our talking. Take in the air through your nose between sentences instead of quick upper chest gasps through your mouth. So that is what we see with dysfunctional breathers. And like the hare and the tortoise with physical exertion, you may need to start speaking a little slower. If you're a really fast talker, it's impossible to get that breath in, so you'll find you're getting that gasping pattern. It's good to do it in front of the mirror. It's always good to get that feedback so you can see what you look like. Oh, sorry, healthy habit number 9 we've already done, breathing well when exercising. So this is interesting. There's a study that shows a cheetah can run 110 kilometers per hour and they do it through their nose, so with their mouth closed. So that's interesting. So just touching on that breathing well during exercise again, you will breathe more. So it's important to understand that we don't expect those breaths to be the same as when you're maybe sitting at the desk. So your breath rate may go up a little bit and the volume of your breath may go up a little bit, of course, because working muscles need more oxygen and produce more carbon dioxide. So you might go up to 16 breaths instead of 12 breaths, but we still want this good pattern of breathing and we still want that breath to be going in and out through the nose. So by not over breathing, your carbon dioxide remains high enough to allow oxygen to be released more efficiently. So once you get this, you'll actually have more oxygen in your muscles and you will find that it becomes like a performance enhancing effect. So you'll be running even faster than ever before. So there are 9 habits, healthy habits of breathing. You'll get to a point where, of course, we just need to practice, practice, practice. And I like this phrase, practice makes permanent rather than practice makes perfect. Practice is what it takes. It'll take a little while, so don't give up. But sometimes you're not making the progress that you expect to be making. So sometimes we plateau, and there's some reasons why this might happen. Diet is one of them. So overeating puts a lot of stress on your body and you'll find that will deepen your breathing. Eating when you're not hungry increases the stress and energy requirements of your body. Eating foods that are going to trigger adrenaline, so our sugary, processed, grainy foods, they are going to stimulate our adrenals to make adrenaline, and adrenaline is going to cause us to breathe faster. Gulping air when we eat. So what we want to do is chew with our mouth closed, so we're breathing in and out through our nose as always, and we don't want to breathe in as we place the food in your mouth. So you want to just have a little pause there so you're not, throwing it all in together at the same time as a big deep breath. Another little tip there, if you do have a tendency to snore, try not to eat within 2 hours of going to bed. Some people do find if they're really struggling with nose breathing, giving up dairy for a little while can really help free up that congestion, and you might find you have more luck. So here are some of the foods that we should be avoiding that may cause overbreathing, and certainly if you've been really diligent with your exercises and then you find that you're not making the progress that you expected, you might need to look at your breathing. Look at your food. So here's just a little table of a typical Western diet. You can see it's very grain heavy: cornflakes, toast, muffins, bread, energy bars, pasta for dinner. And on the right hand side, a balanced diet. So you're still getting a little bit of grains in there, a little bit of toast, but you're evening it out. So you're getting a nice balance of your proteins, your carbohydrates, your fruits and vegetables, and your fats there, of course, with your avocado. So with everything, you are what you eat. So fresh, whole, natural plant food is what we're aiming for. If you are a meat eater, pasture-raised meat, not too much of it. Obviously, organic, locally grown food is going to have more nutrients, and trying to get some naturally fermented foods in there as well. We're avoiding, the big one to avoid in terms of your breathing is your sugar, your processed, your refined foods, and then also caffeine will stimulate your breathing. And if you do have nasal congestion, trialing dairy-free. We need to make sure we're getting enough water. So certainly if you're a mouth breather, you'll find that you dehydrate a lot more than what you would expect or what is normal. So remembering there our magic formula of 33 milliliters per kilogram of body weight every day, and more if you're having caffeinated drinks. So for every caffeinated drink, you should add another 250 mils of water into your daily intake. Sometimes sprinkling a little bit of good quality salt, your Himalayan salt, something like that, will help the body to absorb the water. So if you're feeling that you're drinking a lot of water, but you're just weeing it all out and you're still feeling very dehydrated, sometimes that's because of a salt imbalance. So just a tiny sprinkling of salt in the water may help that. So this is your homework. You're going to spot check every hour. Make sure that you're not mouth breathing, holding your breath. Make sure we can't hear your breath, that you're not breathing into your upper chest, that you're not gasping when you talk, puffing, panting, sighing, yawning, breathing fast or irregular, or clearing your throat all the time. Our food choices, we're going to try to avoid those high starch, high processed, high sugar meals, and avoiding alcohol and obviously coffee in the evenings. So I hope you found that really helpful. It's just a few tips there, things that you can start to work on right away at home. Obviously, if you need more information or more of personalized, we can offer that for you. But a lot of people, honestly, if you put this into practice and you're really diligent with it, get amazing results just with these 9 healthy habits. So good luck. If you have any questions, of course, give us a call. Thanks.